Well, thanks so much for those voice notes. And I must just tell you, listening to what has been said, and we've been speaking about these porous borders for so many years, and unfortunately, nothing seems to get done. And then, of course, you listen to the Commissioner of the Border Management Authority, Michael Masiapato, and he talks about how under-resourced they are, where he says they have about 2,600 people working for the BMA, whereas they should be having something like 11,600. So that tells you already that where the problem lies there, and that doesn't even address the scarcity of resources. He spoke about having 4 drones for all posts across the country. Insufficient, clearly, but that is where things are right now. Let's quickly get this in. And the ANC's National Working Committee is meeting today with Eastern Cape provincial leadership to look at the issues of contention. You'll remember that the Eastern Cape's ANC elective conference was interdicted over the weekend. So we have our reporter Zara Groenewald who's following this story for us. Zara, good afternoon. So has that meeting started, and what have we heard so far in terms of those in attendance and, of course, what is being discussed?
Good afternoon, Sakina. Thank you so much for having me. So what we understand at this stage is the ANC's national leadership is now stepping in after the conference failed to proceed. While the party hasn't publicly released a full attendance list, the expectation is that the National Working Committee and the Eastern Cape provincial leadership are engaged in this intervention. And so that would typically include the NWC members, senior provincial executives, and officials connected to the conference process. And so while there hasn't been a formal agenda, the broad issues are clear from the events that derailed the conference. First, there are serious branch and delegate disputes, including questions about whether meetings and delegate accreditation were done correctly, which directly affects who gets to vote. Second, the party needs to consider the legal vulnerabilities that emerged because court action stopped this conference. Third, underlying all of this are political divisions and factional tensions within the province. And finally, the meeting will be forced or will focus on whether the ANC can create conditions for a credible, legally defensible conference going forward.
Any news about a date for that conference?
Well, so far there has been no date confirmed. That is because the ANC is likely waiting to see whether it can first resolve the legal branch and organizational disputes that led up to the collapse of the event that was meant to take place this past weekend. And so setting a new date without addressing these underlying issues would risk another failed conference. So for now, we are waiting to hear the outcomes of that meeting.
Thanks so much, SABC News reporter Zara Groenewald at Luthuli House. Well, that's where we'll leave it for today. Thanks so much for listening, for participating, and to the production team. Here's Ondelambana with your latest news.
Thank you, Sakina and the team on the top stories. Court dismisses MK Party's bid on Shamila Batohi and Madcare 24 officers to be served with suspension notices. For SFM News, I'm Ondelambana, and a very good day. The High Court in Pretoria has dismissed the MK Party's bid to block former National Director of Public Prosecutions Shamila Batohi's pension payout and other post-term gratuities. The MKP had argued that the payment of public funds should be lawful, rational and constitutionally defensible in circumstances where concerns are raised about what the party describes as Batohi's misconduct. The application was met with strong opposition from the respondents, who argued that the matter was without merit and should fail. The High Court, in an electronic court order, dismissed Part A application for an interim interdict and ordered the MK to pay the costs. Suspended South Gauteng Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Andrew Chauke, says he did not act with any bias when dealing with murder charges against former Crime Intelligence head Richard Mdluli. Chauke has told the Ngabinde inquiry that he referred the matter for an inquest as there was insufficient evidence to prosecute at the time. He was further accused of working the murder case against Mdluli by allowing unnecessary delays. The inquiry is probing Chauke's fitness to hold office. Chauke testified that charges against Mdluli were later reinstated following the decision of an inquest. Hence, he was finally sentenced to an effective 5 years imprisonment for assault and kidnap of his former lover's husband, Opara Mokhibe.
I charged Mdluli in respect of all the other offenses of kidnapping, assault on the victims. If I really had anything to do with him that I was protecting him, or probably they would have found a reason not to proceed with those charges, given that there were even more than 10, 11 years, which is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is I made it accordingly without any fear of ever prejudice. We went to a trial and they were convicted and they were sentenced to 5 years imprisonment.
The South African Police Service says 5 of the 12 senior police officers who appeared in the Pretoria Magistrates Court in connection with the Medicare 24 Tshwane district contract have been served with notices of intention to suspend them. The officers have been charged with fraud and corruption. They are accused of assisting alleged underworld crime boss Vusimuzi Matlala to secure a 360 million rand tender to provide health services to the police service. Acting Deputy National Commissioner for Support Services, Lieutenant General Dineo says all the officers will face disciplinary processes.
And yes, internally as the South African Police Service, we follow our disciplinary processes. We have issued the 5 officials with notices of intended suspension. They have been given an opportunity to submit their representations, and their representations will be considered and a decision will be taken. But I can assure South Africans that the necessary disciplinary processes will be undertaken.
The TRC Cases Inquiry has welcomed the Johannesburg High Court decision to dismiss former Presidents Jacob Zuma and Thabo Mbeki's application to remove inquiry chairperson, retired Justice Sisi Khambembe. Zuma and Mbeki had asked the court to remove Khambembe from the inquiry, while Mbeki also wanted actions already taken by the commission to be set aside. The court found that the former heads of state had not followed the proper legal process, making the application invalid. Zuma and Mbeki have also been ordered to pay legal costs. This is TRC Cases Inquiry spokesperson Lionel Adendorf.
The TRC Cases Inquiry is obviously very happy with this judgment. We welcome it. And we are certain that this was the last hurdle after so many attempts to delay our work, to frustrate our work, and that now we can continue with our work uninterrupted.
The Amaxhosa royal family says it will fight to protect the sovereignty of the people of the Eastern Cape and Amaxhosa territory. This as the community of Buffalo City marches against the unauthorized coronation of the Nigerian Igbo king at Gugombo City. This follows videos circulated in social media showing the coronation ceremony held at the city earlier this month, causing an uproar. Inkosi Khandi Bambilizwe Sikawo of Amaxhosa Royal House says they're here to make a mark and calling on legal steps to be taken.
It is totally unacceptable. We cannot allow our sovereignty to be undermined by whoever, not necessarily directing this to the Nigerians. So we're just putting a call to everyone throughout the world to know that this is the territory of Amaxhosa and no one must undermine that.
Recapping the top story, the High Court in Pretoria has dismissed the MK Party's bid to block former National Director of Public Prosecutions Shamila Batohi's pension payout and other post-term gratuities. I'm Ondilambana for SFM News Headlines at 1:30.
Clientele is here to safeguard you and your family with compassion because life happens. Be part of a family that truly cares. Our funeral dignity plans have helped South Africans bury their loved ones with dignity for more than 30 years. Let us help you create a meaningful tribute that honors your life and those of your loved ones. We pay out within 24 hours and you will get double accident cover with a clientele funeral plan. Our plans are affordable. Pick the option that suits your needs. Easy to apply, no medical examinations and no paperwork. SMS SAFM to 48031. That's 48031. Clientele Life is an authorized FSP and licensed life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Mzansi, let's talk for a moment. 1 in 3 women in South Africa will experience gender-based violence in a lifetime. How can that be true? That could be your sister, your friend, your neighbor. All of us can change that. GBVF doesn't start in courtrooms, but in conversations we ignore, jokes we laugh at, silence we keep. This International Women's Month, let's all give to gain. Give respect, courage, and action. We gain safer relationships, caring families, and a country where women and girls can live without fear. Brought to you by the GBVF Response Fund. Proudly supported by the SABC.
As you're getting to wherever you're going, all these trucks you're dodging, that's billions of rands in motion. Imagine that flow stopping because drivers must swap SIMs for better signal. That's an expensive pause that your business can't afford. Don't let bad tech choices get in the way. Switch to a reliable, stable network because nothing should stop your business. Call 084 1234. Cell C.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za.
This Human Rights Month, we commemorate a significant milestone, the Bill of Rights at 30, making human dignity real. For 3 decades, South Africa's constitution has been a beacon of equality, freedom, and justice for all. Yet dignity is not just written in our constitution, it must be lived, protected, and upheld every single day. Join SAFM as we unpack the issues that matter, elevate voices driving change, and reflect on the progress we've made while confronting the work that still lies ahead. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
So Joel, what is love in your language? What is it? Ife. Is that right? Am I saying that? So what kind of love is this? It's so unusual to me that a friend can give his own life for another, and another, and another, yeah. It is by far the greatest sacrifice known to men. And if you know what's good for you, you'd pay attention to the pleas that he makes day by day. From the morning to another morning, he says, can I show you how much I care? Would you be willing to let me in your heart? I'm so happy to lay down my life, so you have life in me. You have it for you, life and death. Would you be willing to give up a train? I'm so happy to give one to you. Would you listen to me? Oh, what kind of love is this? It's so unusual to me that a friend can give his own life for another, and another, and another, yeah. sacrifice known to men. And if you know what's good for you, you'd pay attention to the pleas that he makes day by day. From the morning to another morning. Ooh, my mind just can't comprehend. Ooh, how a father can make such a sacrifice of giving up his only son that he ever had. Oh,
It is the sounds of Lulu Tekana coming through with Life and Death Gone Too Soon, the sister of one Zonke Tekana, and that is how we kick off the show today. Hope you had a great weekend, managed to get yourself some rest and ready for the week that lies ahead. Speaking of the week that lies ahead, we have a full week because Justice Madlanga is on a break with that Madlanga Commission, tending to some personal commitments that he couldn't get out of. It was the flex on social media this past weekend. Kids from his alumni posting the fact that we are the personal commitment, as he had to go confer qualifications onto everybody. So it was wonderful to see. We've got a jam-packed show. We're going to be talking teachers, and teachers are said to be drowning in administrative work. How does this impact the classroom? I'd love to know. And perhaps if we have, I know it's 1:15 and you're probably in the class right now if you are a teacher, but maybe you are on holiday or you are on a break and you're able to dip into this conversation. I'd love to hear from you as a teacher, as an educator. How much of your time is administration actually taking from the classroom and from your ability to dedicate to your students? And perhaps you've even pondered on what some of those solutions should look like for yourself and your colleagues. 061-410-4107 is our WhatsApp line. We are also on the road to Easter, and we're looking at some risk areas on the road to Easter 2026, and then we'll look at funding health interventions up front as we near the deadline, of course, of those UN developmental goals for 2030. It's just 4 years away till that deadline. 061-410-4107 is our WhatsApp line. Let's take a quick pause.
For 90 years, one voice has informed, challenged, and connected a nation. SAFM, South Africa's national English public radio station. Established in 1936 as the SABC's very first service, the A program evolving through the English service, Radio South Africa, to SAFM in 1995, shaping thought and strengthening democracy. From a full-spectrum station to a trusted home of news and talk, SAFM continues to lead the conversations 90 years strong. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Zandi Finger's Hive promo agency was growing fast, but the paperwork was catching up. What were you up against?
Challenges that were slowing down my growth was finding clients as well as organizing the promoter application.
But with Yep for online visibility and Zoho to manage her database, she has turned chaos into a well-honeyed hive.
Get Yep by Telkom Business from 249 Rand per month and Zoho from only 1,260 Rand annually. Call 10213 or click telkom.co.za. T's and C's apply. Telkom Business. Possible begins here.
Saturday afternoons in Mzansi, where loyalty is tested every single week. Manchester United fans still believing. Liverpool fans reminding you about history. Chelsea fans saying trust the process. City fans pretending this is all normal. Arsenal fans still shouting out, "We are winning it this year." Every year, mate. But that's love. Through the wins, the heartbreak, the long rebuilds. The English Premier League, where we suffer together, celebrate together, and never stop believing. EPL, Saturdays at 4:30 p.m. on S3. Open up.
Investing shouldn't feel risky. It should give you security and good returns. Earn up to 7.25% interest per annum with an ABSA Cash Invest Tracker for an investment of 100,000 rands or more. Your capital is guaranteed with immediate access to your funds. That's minimum risk, maximum benefit. ABSA Private Banking customers can invest from just R1. Open via the ABSA Banking app, a branch, a private banker, or 0860 111 515. Your story matters. ABSA is an authorized financial services provider. T's and C's apply.
You are listening to The Full Circle.
All right, we are talking teachers now that are said to be drowning in administrative work, and perhaps you, an educator yourself, and you can actually identify with this burden that seemingly would take you out of the classroom, would lessen the time that you should be dedicating and focusing on teaching your children, your students, and helping them out and guiding them. We've got Cheryl Webster joining us, marketing manager of Twinkle South Africa. It's reported that more than 2/3 of South African teachers say that administrative work is their biggest source of stress. Nearly half are considering leaving the profession within the next decade due to overwhelming workloads. How are you doing this afternoon, Cheryl?
Hi, Bridget. I'm well, thanks, and yourself. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it. Let's talk about it, because already we know the burden. It's been an ongoing conversation for the past 10 years. Just the burden and the challenges that teachers face in the classroom. Bigger classrooms, fewer teachers, increasing needs of student bodies with very little resource and assistance from the department, and depending, of course, where you're teaching. Now we add this second layer of the administrative work, which is bearing teachers, underground.
Yeah, you're 100% right, Bridget. What we've seen is that it's not just one thing that's overwhelming teachers in relation to admin. It's a combination of so many things. Teachers are dealing with marking, reporting, lesson planning, and then, like you said, all the admin that just keeps increasing year on year. And what we've seen is that a lot of the time, teachers' school days don't end when the bell rings. That workload doesn't come to a standstill. They're spending more and more of their time outside of school, so in the evenings, over weekends, over school holidays, trying to catch up on the admin. So that includes things like adapting lessons to the different learning needs within one classroom, tracking their learners' progress, meeting the ever-changing curriculum requirements at every level. And a lot of the time, some teachers are teaching more than one subject, or they might be teaching more than one grade. So that also increases and builds on that pressure that they have, and is naturally, I think, it would overwhelm anyone, while also trying to actually impart knowledge and teach and grow young minds.
Mm-hmm. What has changed, Cheryl? What does research say has changed in the teaching landscape over the last years? I mean, did teachers from 10 decades ago, 15 years ago, not 10 decades ago, my apologies, teachers from a decade ago, 15 years ago, did they have the same kind of administrative burden as teachers have now? Or is this a result of the fact that we are seeing less and less teaching staff in classrooms?
I think the problems are not new, they're not unique, but due to the fact that, one, we have fewer teachers in the classroom, bigger classrooms, that admin pressure has increased. There's a lot more to deal with. In a lot of cases, you're dealing with a classroom of 40, 50 plus learners, and in those instances, a lot of learners have very, very different intellectual, social, and emotional needs. and you have one dedicated teacher for 50 learners, and they can't necessarily give every single child the level of attention that they would like to, because there are all these other requirements of them, like we said earlier, between lesson planning and tracking progress and keeping track and on board with the curriculum requirements. So that is one of the biggest contributing factors that I've come to notice, and that we as Twinkle have also noticed. And in speaking to teachers, a lot of them have come to say, look, it's the bigger classrooms, it's the additional admin that comes with the ever-changing curriculum, and then it is trying to be both a teacher, a parent, a caregiver, all of these multiple hats that teachers have to wear in the classroom to be able to adequately, provide for the children, for the learners in their classes.
I'd love to hear from you. If you are a teacher, perhaps you are on a break right now, you have some time in between lessons and you are cooling your jets and listening to the show. 061-410-4107 is our WhatsApp line. You're more than welcome to stay anonymous. If you'd like to share your experience or perhaps your perspective around this, you may stay anonymous. You don't have to give us any detail around where you teach. We just love to hear from you firsthand about your experience as an educator. Do we know of models that work best perhaps in alleviating this kind of stress for teachers? Because I'm thinking in certain countries, I look at Japan, for instance. We often see a lot of teachers or folks who've graduated in English going to Japan on the programs, the JET program in particular, to go teach English. And then when they give you feedback, they say, well, actually, what I really am is a teacher's assistant. I'm doing some of the administrative work. Yes, I'm kind of helping the primary teacher with the languaging, but really I'm just there to be a teacher's assistant. Can models like that be models that are considered in the context of South Africa? And given how many young teachers we have that are graduating, don't have the experience, can't really be placed because of all kinds of budgeting constraints and whatever. But can we look at being creative around how we give assistance to teachers in the classroom?
100%. Bridget, I think you literally hit the nail on the head. Because of these administrative pressures, 100% having a teacher's assistant would make a world of difference. And on the one hand, yes, you're alleviating some of the admin on the teacher, but you're also allowing the assistant to gain that experience outside of just having completed their practicals. They get to experience the classroom for a longer period of time, which then gives them the experience that they need when they are ready to take on a classroom of their own. But I think some other models that are super important at the very grassroots level is just trying to reduce the duplication of effort for teachers, because everyday teachers are trying to create lessons from scratch to meet the different needs of their learners. So giving them access to structured resources and tools that in some cases can be ready-made definitely will alleviate some of that pressure from them, but also being able to have an extra support system, an extra pair of hands to help them on a day-to-day physically within the classroom would make a world of difference.
And I mean, you touched a little bit on, or maybe before we go there, maybe before we double back, you mentioned that maybe giving them some structured tools. Do such things exist? Because I'm looking, and maybe this conversation is best had also juxtaposing the different teaching environments, right? Because a teacher in Crawford or any of the Saints is not going to identify with this level of stress as a teacher who's teaching in Guamashu or teaching in Kunu, for instance, or Soweto. It's a completely different set of resourcing that they have to their disposal.
That is absolutely correct. The struggles differ from area to area, from school to school, whether it is private or public. But resources that are ready-made, that are curriculum aligned, that are CAPS aligned, do exist, and that's where Twinkle South Africa comes in. Our platform is available to teachers with access to ready-made teaching resources that are, one, created by South African teachers for South African teachers. So it is teachers who absolutely understand every facet of classrooms, whether it is, like you mentioned, at a Saint or at a school in Guamash. They are the people that are creating these resources for teachers, and it is very simple resources that can fit into a mainstream classroom if a teacher is in a special needs environment, or for parents that go the homeschooling route. The resources that we create and the tools that we create for the teachers are, one of the great things is we have dual language resources. So it's worksheets, it's activities that teachers can instantly download based on subject, based on grade, and we also have them in most of our South African languages as well. So it also translates across, because we know that not every school has English as a medium of instruction. So in order to ensure that all schools are, to some extent, on an equal footing when it comes to the resources that they're able to access from our platform, it translates across language, it translates across educational needs. So we have resources in South African Sign Language, for example. So it is about inclusivity for us at the end of the day. And the whole point of Twinkle and the teachers behind the scenes that make Twinkle what it is, that produce these high standard, ready-made resources, is that we want to help those who teach. We understand the constraints that they're under, regardless of the types of schools, but we want to give them an extra push in the right direction without adding or duplicating any of their efforts, so that they can cater to all those different needs that they might have in the classroom.
I mean, it sounds like a wonderful resource. Cheryl, let's pause here for a second for the headline news. We'll come back on the other side and go to WhatsApp. 0614104107 is our WhatsApp line. If you are a teacher, an educator, and perhaps you are being buried under administrative work, and you can relate to this load, the paper load that you have to deal with before you even get to teaching any of your subject matters. We'd love to hear your perspective. Maybe you've thought about what kind of resources would come in handy for you and your colleagues. You've sat around at the Teachers Lounge and had a conversation around this to say what is missing in the system to help you deliver at an optimum level. Would be A, B, or C. We'd love to hear from you. 0614104107. It's 1:30. Time for the headline news.
Thank you, Bridget. On the news headlines, a state prosecutor attached to the Randburg court has been granted 3,000 rand bail by the magistrate court. The prosecutor cannot be named until he has pleaded, faces a number of charges. The High Court in Pretoria has dismissed the MK party's bid to block former National Director of Public Prosecutions Shamila Batohi's pension payout and other post-term gratuities. And some commuters are turning to rail transport as a more affordable option as the hefty fuel price increases are set for Wednesday. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Afternoon, Bridget. Your administration is too much. Classes are overcrowded. There is sport, music, but no over what you call extra money for that. The salary is the same, and they are waiting for good results. Some just work for the next class they didn't pass because the government doesn't want children to repeat a class. Thank you, Bridget.
Good afternoon. I hope that you are well.
I kind of don't understand perhaps how do we separate teaching from its admin work? I mean, after teaching, you need to assess and record the assessments. Do we expect somebody to come and record the assessments? Or when we talk about admin, what are we talking about exactly that is related to teaching?
All right. I mean, on the one hand, our first voice note really just talking about just all the added sort of elements of teaching, having to oversee things like sports, extracurricular, et cetera, et cetera. And then I guess the other pertinent, and it sounds like the second voice note could be a teacher, perhaps, or in the education sector, asking the question, Sharol, what are we talking about when we're talking about admin? Because it's part and parcel of being a teacher.
100% it is. But I think the big thing that we need to be cognizant of is the bigger the classroom, the more paperwork, if you want to call it that, a teacher has to manage. They do need to manage progress reports and assessments, etc., which is part and parcel of the job. But I think one of the things that has changed over time, and I'll keep referring back to this, is the different learner needs. So, for example, you might be in a classroom, and I think it's been a topic of discussion for quite some time, with regards to grade 3 learners and their reading abilities, as well as grade 4 learners and their reading and comprehension abilities. You might be sitting in a classroom with a learner who sits in quintile 1, which is their reading level is far below what it should be in the classroom or in that particular grade. And then you might also have in the very same classroom of 40 plus children, a bunch of learners who are in quintile 5, which means they are either reading at that level or exceeding the level of the grade that they're in. And it becomes a lot more difficult for a teacher to have to engage with every single one of those learners at their level. So it is, teachers are spending a lot more time customizing their lesson plans for each day. So you are trying to close the loop for every single learner in your classroom, but you don't necessarily always have the resources at your disposal to be able to do that quickly and efficiently while also keeping up with the curriculum requirements.
Yeah.
So that's one of the big administrative tasks that we are trying to address, that we are trying to help teachers to also get back their time, because a more overwhelmed teacher results in a classroom that isn't always functional at the level that the teacher would like it to be. The teacher isn't able to support the learners in the way that he or she might want to, because they have all these other tasks at hand.
Absolutely. I would like to jump to a caller now. Nosihle. Nosihle, I won't mention any detail except your name. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. Thank you, Bridget. How are you doing?
I'm great. Go ahead.
Yes, I was just wanted to weigh in on the conversation in that it becomes even harder if you are a teacher, you are a class teacher, and then you have to be part of the school management team like I am. When I started teaching about 18 years ago in 2008, definitely the administration work, even though it's part of being a teacher, but I think the top-down approach in introducing new administrative duties is not what we as teachers would like to see. I think that during the policy and making and decision making of our leaders, our education leaders, they should maybe ask us as teachers to have input and to say, what do you think is working according to where you are? Because the demographics of our schools is different as well. So if you're an SMT member and you are a teacher and you are a class teacher and a subject teacher, it just becomes, I think, worse. We end up having a certain level of fatigue because in the morning you're at work, afternoon you're at work until 6, Saturdays you are at work, Sundays you're at work, holidays, you end up not having even time for your own family.
Absolutely.
And that kind of brings on some level of depression, even though we love our job,
Yeah.
but it's becoming too much.
Yeah. No, Sihla, thank you so much for sharing your experience. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you. Okay, cheers.
Cheers. We
Bye.
also have WhatsApp here that says, hey, Bridget, is the admin load being referred to part of experience that's required to be a principal? How else would teachers acquire admin experience for upward mobility? And this is from MM. Let's also jump to the voice note while we're still on WhatsApp.
How's Bridget? I have been a teacher for about 33 years now. The only problem our department has is they don't want to employ. I think it is the effect of this austerity measure.
And that's probably the crux of the matter, right? Is that there's just not enough teachers and not enough sort of innovative thinking, around, out of the box thinking around the profession of teaching and how we make it a little bit easier for those who are in it. And I take that point about, you know, if you are looking at some kind of upward mobility in education, I'm pretty sure the administrative load of principals is also quite a heavy load at times, but at very least they don't also have to be engaged in a classroom. Well, at least the vast majority of them don't have to be engaged literally in the classroom from 8 until 2.
That's absolutely correct. And, you know, we're not taking anything away from the principals because they also have a very big role to play within the school system. And like you've said, not many of them have to still juggle, you know, their everyday admin tasks and liaising with parents and other teachers, etc., with being in a classroom and having to assess 50-odd young minds on a daily basis, you know, marking exams, etc., etc. There's a lot of admin tasks that everyone within the school system has to deal with, and naturally it comes part and parcel of the career.
Absolutely.
However, that does not mean that we cannot employ creative ways to alleviate the pressure, to simplify some of the processes, to just lessen that load, even if it is by 10%, to allow teachers to also be able to have their own time back. I think one of the callers did say that a lot of the time they find themselves not having time for their own families and not being able to disconnect and unplug from their 24-hour job, because essentially that's what teaching is. It is a 24-hour, 365 kind of career that, you know, unfortunately doesn't get the praise that it deserves.
Absolutely.
But we need to find ways to help teachers to alleviate their pressure, and there are lots of creative and simple ways that can be done.
Unfortunately, we have to leave it there for today, but I think you've given us a lot to ponder on, and hopefully with shows like this, it lands on the right kind of ears. That was Cheryl Webster, Marketing Manager of Twinkle South Africa. And if you are a teacher, you might want to check them out and see if some of the resources that they have in place could be something that you could implement and utilize in your classroom for the betterment of what you do. It's 20 to 2 o'clock. A quick pause, and then we come back on the other side.
This Human Rights Month, we commemorate a significant milestone, the Bill of Rights at 30, making human dignity real. For 3 decades, South Africa's constitution has been a beacon of equality, freedom, and justice for all. Yet dignity is not just written in our constitution, it must be lived, protected, and upheld every single day. Join SAFM as we unpack the issues that matter, elevate voices driving change, and reflect on the progress we've made while confronting the work that still lies ahead. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Bridget Masinga, weekdays on The Full Circle.
All right, we are joined now by Heidi Diaga, Optics Intelligence Lead, as millions of South Africans prepare to hit the roads over Easter. New telematics data from Optics Africa points to avoidable risks on our busiest corridors for SA motorists and fleet managers. How are you doing this afternoon, Heidi?
Good afternoon, Bridget. Thank you for inviting us to talk today. Lovely to meet you.
Only but a pleasure. So over the last 3 Easters, Optics-enabled fleets recorded a very sharp spike in near collisions and collision events on the big national roads, the N1 and the N3. Good Friday standing out as the single most dangerous travel day. Tell us more.
That is correct. If we look at the data collected with over 50,000 vehicles fitted in South Africa alone, we're able to see that there is a trend the day just before we have our Easter Friday. It is due to main things like, for instance, fatigue, drowsiness, not giving headway, incidents.
We're having just a connection problem there for a second, Heidi. We are dipping in and out as the producers try and give yet another call to Heidi from a different line. Perhaps we just take a quick pause and we come back on the other side.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation.
You are listening to The Full Circle.
Just looking at SABC 404, and they're having a conversation around the brutal fuel price increase that is going to happen from the 1st of April. It's insane. I don't know about you, whether you noticed over the weekend just how packed the petrol garages were in and around your neighborhood. In my neighborhood, they were unusually packed over the weekend. Even I filled up over the weekend, and I was at half tank. I decided to just go fuel up, and then I bumped into a friend of mine, Sizwe Lomo, who also had been filling up his farm vehicles, his tractors and his trucks over the weekend, and considering storing some petrol, some diesel particularly as well, because there has been murmurings that diesel was short in some areas. I don't know how true it is or not true it is, because there's been conflicting information on social media. What is the government going to do to cushion us, if they're going to do anything at all? It just seems like they're taking a wait and see, hands off approach, as like we are basically on our own. Heidi is back on the line. Okay, Heidi, let's talk about, you were telling us about the stats and what they showed around Good Friday as being the single most dangerous day to travel.
Thank you, Bridget, and apologies for that. Yes, we can see patterns of drowsiness, falling asleep. That is a big lead up to near collisions. And being able to keep your distance from the following car is also quite important. Harsh braking is also a big cause of near collisions, unavoidable. And driving very early in the morning is showing a pattern that drowsiness and fatigue has got an impact on the occurrences of collisions on those roads. One of the things that we can pick up is that from our statistics from 2024 to 2025 shows that there is an improvement. We focus very hard with the customers that we've got our solutions fitted with to implement programs. You know, it's important to work with the drivers, implement programs where we can help them to avoid and to plan for a lot of these things and prevent them. So that means with that implementation with our customers, we've seen a reduction for up to 40% in the incidence of near collision and events of fatigue occurring out on the road, specifically on the N1 and the N3, which are the two travel paths that you can see with the highest occurrences.
This Easter, you're urging travelers to make a few simple changes. Talk to us about what those look like.
So Limpopo sees millions of travelers attending the Maria religious pilgrimage. So avoid the N1, the R71 corridor during peak pilgrimage windows, and consider the N11 via Mokopane being a 25 to 35 minutes, but it's at least a predictable travel time that you can take in consideration.
All right. So those are for those traveling towards Limpopo. Anything else? Because we know that people over this period are either going towards that side for the religious pilgrimage, or they're heading on the N1, N3. They headed towards the coast, most likely. What do we do there come the long weekend?
Being vigilant. So yes, everybody wants to travel down to the coast to get the last bit of summer on the beach over the Easter period. Traveling down those roads, avoid driving on the N1 nighttime, especially over the long weekend. I think it's important for people to check their tires before departure and commit to a zero alcohol policy for all the designated drivers on those roads. Also, very important is to maintain at least a 3 to 4 minute second follow gap, especially behind buses and taxis and trucks. You know, if they stopped abruptly, we have to respond very quickly. So schedule rest stops every 2 hours so that you can make sure that you counter fatigue. You don't counter fatigue.
Yeah. You know, I think a lot of the conversation, Heidi, is really about, and when we open the line to callers around driving, it's really around driver attitudes. You know, driver attitudes in the country. We're very impatient, and we always seemingly in a rush to get somewhere. And I think half the time that is half our problem.
Yes, that is so true. Patience is something that we all need to take in consideration. We're all on the roads. We all have families at home that is waiting for us. And it's not just the consumer out there. This includes those bus drivers, the taxi drivers, and the trucks that have to be working over this weekend to make sure that we have the facilities required for us to purchase from in the shops over the weekend.
Absolutely. Heidi Diaga, thank you so much for the time. Optics Intelligence Lead, just giving us some pointers ahead of this very busy Easter season. So remember to plan.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Remember to plan your trip well in advance. Make sure that you've checked your car, your tires, your brakes, your windscreen wipes, because you never know if you encounter a storm halfway along the way. No nighttime driving. Never really been a fan of nighttime driving because that's when people are at their worst behavior. And of course, do schedule in some rest stops as well along the way. Changing focus now. Today is World Bipolar Awareness Day, and we focus on debunking some of the bipolar disorder myths versus facts. We've got Casey Chambers joining us, Operations Director at SADC. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for the time. World Bipolar Awareness Day, very important day indeed. But let's also just start at the basics of getting to understand a bipolar diagnosis. What is bipolar disorder?
So bipolar disorder used to be commonly known as manic depression, which basically talks around these two intense or major shifts in mood, from a manic or maniac episode where you're feeling you don't need sleep for days, you're talking and thinking really, really fast, you have these grandiose feelings and thoughts that you are the smartest on the world, you often reckless with money or even these kinds of decisions. And then you're on top of the world and you have this drastic shift into a deep depression where physically you're having all sorts of depression, even possibly battling to get out of bed and to function, and even developing thoughts of suicide. So bipolar is these intense shifts in mood. And it's normal for us to have mood shifts. We all feel happy and sad in a day. But for bipolar disorder, these could often happen during the day. It could happen every week. And it starts to impact daily functioning.
As we talk about the myth versus the fact, I think bipolar disorder gets a sort of a very bad or a very bad rep out there socially, right? Because people don't really look at it as intense shifts in mood, fluctuating from extreme happiness to extreme depression. It's almost as though they approach it from Mr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type vibes. Like somehow you initiate an evil within you that takes over.
Exactly. And I think it's, again, where movies has not helped us in this regard. We're seeing some changes with the true reflections of what bipolar disorder could feel for someone who's living it. But unfortunately, the movies show this switch, this on and off, right? And unfortunately, they've also been deemed as violent or crazy or dangerous. And that's the opposite of the truth. You know, there's so many of these misconceptions or misunderstandings that can be really harmful and adds to the stigma on why people living with bipolar are too afraid to tell their family members, their friends, their work colleagues. So they suffer in silence. And the minute we start seeing bipolar disorder as a real treatable mental illness, just like any other medical illness that needs real treatment, people with bipolar disorder are not unstable or dangerous. You know, most people with the right treatment and support can live very stable, very successful lives. And I think often we just assume that someone chooses to have these different changes in their mood states, that they choose, that they can just snap out of it. And yet these are the common misconceptions that we're trying today and every day of the year to really talk around what it is and what it isn't, and being curious to learn more about what bipolar disorder is. And it's not just something that happens to other people, but actually it happens to about 3 to 4% of the entire South African population.
And that's a significant percentage indeed. You touch a bit about the ability to live a quote-unquote normal life, because what is normal? So relative. And oftentimes that's one of the myths, right? People have the belief that bipolar, those diagnosed with bipolar disorder cannot live normal, productive lives, and yet we see it all the time, how that is possible.
Exactly, and I think if we have more ambassadors that are sharing that, you know, there's obviously different levels of functioning, different variations or intensities of the illness, and we know that with early diagnosis, the prognosis of the illness is really positive. You know, being on the right treatment, having the right support, learning as much as you can all really help as contributing factors to that. But there are successful business people and actors and advertisers. There's so many success stories we have of people living with a mental illness that you wouldn't even know that they're functioning, they have families, they're working, they're super successful. But we also do know that people who've lived with it for a long time, maybe undiagnosed or untreated, could be suffering in silence, and they often are too afraid to get a job. They maybe are dealing with the symptoms of the illness, so they're not able to leave home and go out and get that job and, you know, connect with other people. And those are the stories and the stigma and the picture that we often have when we think of bipolar disorder. But it definitely exists on a spectrum, and I think if we start looking and if we start having more comfortable or safe conversations, you'll find that more and more people feel comfortable to say, actually, I have bipolar disorder, and this is what my bipolar disorder feels like. These are my symptoms. This is how I manage my illness. And that's where we get that shared understanding, is if we hear from people with lived experience, kind of champions who say, this is what it is, this is what it isn't, and based on true facts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I have a bit of a beautiful advantage in that some of the creatives I've encountered over the years on this show and just in my creative parallel life, folks who are brave enough to share that, you know, they have a bipolar disorder, and as you say, this is the experience. And one such person is a lady, Kopano Cohen, who's a television executive who oftentimes comes on this particular show to share about living with bipolar and navigating it as a creative, you know, the up days, the low days, and for all intents and purposes, had she never opened her mouth to tell us, I would not have known. And, you know, just this 2 weekends ago, not this weekend, the last weekend, the big international star Doja Cat was in the country and doing some Googling around her. And I was like, oh, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And I just think from a creative perspective, it also helps.
Absolutely. And I think, again, harnessing those strengths, which is all about the theme for World Bipolar Days, the strength in bipolar, is that, again, there's often this doom and gloom and heaviness, but actually there can be creative juices. They could, you know, help you with that motivation. And these are people, and these are the kinds of stories that we need more of, especially for the person who's listening who feels like no one else understands, that they're too scared to come out and tell someone that they're not going to be accepted or seen. And I think you just sharing, Bridget, sharing that story, someone is listening saying, oh, there's someone else like me. Oh, this is actually a safe space. This is where someone can be celebrated, and there doesn't have to be shame in my illness. In the same way that we are trying to take shame away from people who are living with other illnesses, we need to do the same with people living with mental illness, because if we create more safer communities and more safer conversations, more people can come out, share how to get help, what works for them, what doesn't work, where to go for help. Then we could see more people suffering less and getting access to care sooner on. And we never know. There could be someone listening now who is going to be the next creative or the next person that with an innovative idea. And that's what we need, to celebrate all of that diversity and all of that different strengths in us all.
Absolutely. Cassie Chambers, we have to leave it there for this afternoon, but we appreciate the time. Operations Director at SADC, talking World Bipolar Awareness Day. It's 2 o'clock. It's time for Ndalambana and the top of the hour news.
Thank you, Bridget. On the top stories, Gugombo march against a Nigerian king turns volatile, and court dismisses MK party's bid on Shamila Batohi. For SAFM News, I'm Ondilambana, and a very good day. At least 12 vehicles are believed to have been set alight as the march against the alleged coronation of a Nigerian Igbo king turns volatile at Gugombo City in the Eastern Cape. It is alleged that a member of the group that came down from KwaZulu was stabbed, sparking the arson. The march had been organized as a peaceful demonstration with participants intending to hand over a memorandum raising concerns over the reported coronation of an Igbo Nigerian king in the Eastern Cape. Hlumisa Kabaga has more.
During the handover of the memorandum regarding the matter of the coronation and the legality of those who were participants in the event of the coronation, one of the KZN unit members was stabbed by who is alleged to be a foreign national. People are now all over the streets of Oxford Street in Gugombo, taking their exacting revenge upon those who they assume are Nigerian nationals. Shops and vehicles of them have been burnt, and they are now on their way to California, a unit where is popularly known in East London, Gugombo, as a ground for Nigerians. Shumisa Kabaka, SABC News, Gugombo.
The High Court in Pretoria has dismissed the MK Party's bid to block former National Director of Public Prosecutions Shamila Batohi's pension payout and other post-term gratuities. The MKP had argued that the payment of public funds should be lawful, rational and constitutionally defensible in circumstances where concerns are raised about the party what describes as Batohi's misconduct. The application was met with strong opposition from the respondents, who argued that the matter was without merit and should fail. The High Court in electronic court order dismissed Part A application for an interim interdict and ordered the MKP to pay costs. A state prosecutor attached to the Randburg court has been granted 3,000 rand bail by the magistrates court on charges including sexual assault, sexual intimidation, corruption and defeating the ends of justice. He handed himself over to the police following the allegations made by a complainant who had visited the Randburg magistrate court to inquire about her brother's arrest. Magistrate Annalise Tlhapi granted the bail with conditions including surrendering his passport to authorities.
There is a request from the state that I have to extend the conditions. Therefore, the following condition will also apply. Firstly, you don't have to go back to Randburg Magistrate Court. You are not allowed to enter such. Case postponed to the 7th of May for investigation. As I've said, bail is 3,000 rand. If you pay it, you'll be released.
Some commuters are turning to rail transport as a more affordable option as the hefty fuel price increases are set for Wednesday. PRASA has confirmed fares will remain unchanged in April and urged people to make use of train services amid rising fuel costs. Regional Manager Raymond Maseko has encouraged passengers to take advantage of monthly tickets that are discounted by up to 40%. Maseko says PRASA aims to assist commuters with a cost-saving alternative.
For a 20-kilometer ride with PRASA, you are paying 10 rand. Between 21 kilometers, 40 kilometers is 12 rand, and anything above 40 kilometers is 14 rand per ride. That is as if you are buying a single ticket on your daily commute. But if you then want to save and really let your rent go to other things other than transport, we are encouraging that you buy a monthly ticket.
U.S. President Donald Trump has continued to give mixed messages on Iran, saying a deal on ending the war might be reached soon, but also suggesting the U.S. could seize a key oil terminal. Trump told the Financial Times that American troops could easily take Hog Island. The BBC's Liz Doucette assesses the potential move.
Possibly they could make a landing on Karg Island, but they would be under fire as they go in. Then they would be in range of Iranian artillery, of Iranian fast boats. And then what? They're sitting ducks. How do you control the island? How do you hold it? How do you resupply it? There are hardline Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps who are hoping that is what President Trump is going to do. Their whole strategy in this war is to increase the cost for the United States, and nothing increases the costs more than killing American soldiers.
Recapping the top story, at least 12 vehicles are believed to have been set alight as the march against the alleged coronation of a Nigerian Igbo king turns volatile at Kukompo City in the Eastern Cape. I'm Ondilambana for SFM News Headlines at 2:30.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za.
You are listening to The Full Circle.
yemadoda seke nayibona ingelo semhlabeni. Hey, ubukho bakho bunjengelanga ngekuseni bo. Ubuhle bakho uphithizelisa amadoda. Hey, ubuhle bakho bunjengenkwenkwezi ebusuku. Ubukho bakho bunjengemvula kwimbalela bo. Nafike emhlabeni yo. Ay, yeah.
MXO coming through with Ingelosi. Ngolisi is his birth name, but MXO is what we go by. He's actually got some new music that he released. Well, relatively new, because I think it came out last time we spoke to him on this particular show was at the beginning of 2025, if I'm not mistaken, in case you were wondering what he's been up to. It's gone 10 past 2 o'clock, and we're going to be having a conversation now that's looking to understand the role of a company secretary, the silent pillar of good governance in any company structures. And then we also, in this hour, are going to have a conversation around funding health interventions upfront as we near the deadline of the UN Development Goals for 2030. That target, by the way, being just less than 4 years away. On the line, Stephen Sadie joins us now, Chief Executive Officer of the Chartered Governance Institute of Southern Africa. In a world of corporate leadership, attention often is focused on CEOs, board chairs, and executives. But behind the scenes, there's one role that plays a crucial part in keeping organizations compliant, ethical, and well-governed, and that is the role of the company's secretary. Good afternoon to you, Stephen. How are you doing?
Fine, thanks, and you, Bridget. All good on my side.
Great. Thank you so much for the time. Maybe first, a bit of context around the Chartered Governance Institute of Southern Africa.
Yeah, well, we've been around in South Africa for 115 years, believe it or not. So we're one of the oldest professional bodies, and our role has always been to develop company secretaries. We call ourselves chartered secretaries. And a charter simply means is a charter signed off by the Queen, or in this case, the King of England. And our role is to provide guidance to boards, our members who are company secretaries, which is compulsory for listed companies and for state-owned companies to have a company secretary. And obviously many other unlisted and private and even NGOs would have company secretaries who provide guidance to the board on legislation and governance and the director duties and so on.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I wonder, you mentioned, for instance, listed companies and even NGOs in this particular instance. And I wonder, is this something, particularly when you look at the NGO space and the various tiers of companies, is the provision of a secretary one that is mandatory at every tier, or it is perhaps only necessary at a particular tier level?
Well, it's only mandatory for listed companies, so people listed on the JSE, and for state-owned companies. But for other companies, it's voluntary. But obviously, the bigger companies, even if they're unlisted, they would have a company secretary. There's a whole lot of compliance duties that they would have. I was just trying to say that even some NGOs would have a company secretary, maybe not a full-time one, but a part-time one. And so it's a common thing, and we have members in the private sector, in the public sector as well. We try and improve governance and in all different levels and in all parts of the country. So it's a very important role that people often don't understand. What the role of the company secretary is, but it's absolutely vital for any board of directors.
Let's look at that role then. What does a company secretary actually do? And feel free to elaborate down to the most minuscule of function.
Well, at a very basic level, at any board meeting, they would prepare the board pack together with the chairman of the board. They would also be responsible for taking the minutes, for writing up any resolutions. And then in a meeting, they would also provide guidance on any sort of governance issues, maybe a conflict of interest. That's very important. We know that directors might be conflicted, and in particular, we have many examples of tenders where they're given to family members or to friends or to colleagues and things like that. So the conflict of interest is a very basic function of the company secretary to manage and to advise the chairman that we need to prepare for this and deal with it when it comes up in a meeting. All sorts of compliance things. If your directors change, you've got to notify the CIPC on director changes. When there's an AGM, you've got to prepare an AGM and make sure the notice goes out with sufficient time. You've got to be able to make sure that the chairperson deals with any questions that may come from the floor, and even if it's an online meeting, that questions may come from any shareholders or stakeholders, and that the chairperson or any of the directors would have to deal with it. So it's quite a broad role. The biggest one is to, I would say, if you want to summarize it, is to be the trusted advisor of the board. Even an individual director may not be sure of a particular item in a board pack, and he would then go to the company secretary, listen, could you guide me on this? I just want to make sure I understand properly what the issues around, and that would be the role of the company secretary. You will only notice when things go wrong that you don't have a good company secretary, and that's when you're in the media and when you're, where there's a risk, a reputation risk for your company.
Given the scope of role here and the fact that the role has evolved quite significantly over the years, as you say, a company secretary is now deeply entrenched in corporate governance. It's the bridge between the board, the management, the stakeholders, etc. What kind of, if any at all, I don't know, in fact, what kind of credential or qualification is one supposed to have if one takes up the role of company secretary?
Well, that's exactly what we do. I mean, we're a professional body, so if you want to be a member, you've got to pass our board exams. Just like the chartered accountants, you can't become a chartered accountant without writing their board exams. So we're very similar. So you've got to pass our board exams, and then you would be eligible to become a member, and we have different tiers. As soon as you pass your exams, you could become a grad CG, a graduate of the Chartered Governance Institute, and a few years later, you could apply to be an associate, and then a few years later, you could apply to be a fellow of the Institute. So we have a qualification. It's probably the only corporate governance qualification in South Africa. It is an internationally accredited qualification. We fall under a global body called the Chartered Governance Institute. That's why we are the Chartered Governance Institute of Southern Africa. And we cover Botswana, Lesotho, Namibia, and Eswatini as well. So there is a qualification. Our members have to do continuous professional development. We have disciplinary bodies in case any member steps out of line and a member of the public would like to complain. And so we're a fully fledged professional body. We also registered with the South African Qualifications Authority as a professional body. If our members want to immigrate, they're free to do so. They can go to any of our other countries like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the UK, Singapore, Hong Kong, and so on. And we would release them on the site, and they could become a member within a few days on the other side, because the qualification is the same. The curriculum is the same. We would obviously adapt our curriculum and do things like the King Code of Corporate Governance. We would use the South African Companies Act. We would use the JSE listings requirements. But the curriculum would be very similar in other jurisdictions.
And in terms of the company secretaries and just how critical that role is in preventing governance failures, you made a sort of smirk around the fact that you only know that you really do have or don't have a company secretary worth their weight in gold once you find yourself embroiled and being front page of the news.
Yeah. Well, look, let's put it this way. South Africa, unfortunately, has got a terrible record of corporate governance. There are so many examples. We can look in the public sector. I mean, it's on TV and the newspapers every day, the Matlanga Commission, classic example of poor governance at the upper echelons of the police service. We look at water supply in Johannesburg. You can look at Johannesburg Water. They have a board of directors. They've not made sufficient plans in the last few years to deal with the water crisis, and now we have all sorts of water problems and pipes bursting all over the show. Those are governance issues, and if a board of directors does not do their duties properly, when the crisis happens, it's a little bit too late now for them to say we've got to fix up all the maintenance of pipes that we haven't done for the last 10 years. I was on the Johannesburg Water website the other day just to see who the directors are who are responsible for water governance in Johannesburg. There are 14 directors. They all have 11 of them have photos. 3 of them didn't have a photo. I'm not quite sure why we couldn't even get a photo. This is a major billion enterprise. All our rates and taxes we pay for water. We don't get it for free. And then what was more interesting is when you click on the photo, you should be able to see who the director is, what's their qualifications, what's the experience, and there's absolutely nothing on their website. So that gives you a little bit of insight into the governance of water. You can look at the water boards. We have them all. We fall under Rand Water. There are all these water boards. There's about 9 of them around the country. There are 78 non-executive directors on these water boards. Only 16 of them have engineering qualifications. So what kind of governance is it that you would have so few engineers at such senior levels to look at water? And it's not, Joburg's not the only place where we don't have water. I mean, there's problems all over the country, especially in the small little towns and so on. So you will see why governance is so important in South Africa. And it's not limited to the public sector. We've had the Steinhoffs, the Tongaat Hewletts, the EOH, Daybreak, and so on. many examples in the private sector as well of complete lack of corporate governance. And so it's a very important area. The one person in a company that we would say the guardian of corporate governance is the company secretary. But they cannot do it on their own. It depends on the board of directors. It depends on the chairperson of the board and so on. And your most important position is the CEO. And that, when you ask me what is the board's role, the very first important role is to appoint the CEO. And you don't want to make a mistake on that one. And the second most important role is to fire the CEO, which is also difficult. You see in our public sectors, hardly a CEO never gets fired, no matter how bad the performance. You never, very seldom hear of a CEO of a public sector getting fired. So governance at that level is so critical. And then, it doesn't have to be this way. Look at SARS, the South African Receiver of Revenue. We had Edward Kieswetter. He inherited an institution that was really broken down to its bones. And over the last 7 years, the Commissioner has managed to turn it around. Why are we appointing young people into all these senior positions around the country, both public sector and in some cases the private sector? Once you appoint senior managers who are corrupt and so on, then we shouldn't be surprised when corruption happens. And that is the problem, I think, with South Africa. There's too many patronage networks. If you look at national departments, provincial departments, municipalities, state-owned companies, the corruption or patronage networks run very, very deep. And often the people are there to provide tenders to their allocated contacts.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate we're in such a position in South Africa where it's really at a terrible level. The pandemic in South Africa, corruption, it's not just a few isolated cases.
Absolutely, absolutely. You touched a little bit about, this role being an ever-evolving one of company secretary. Let's talk about that evolution for a bit, particularly in today's environment.
Well, as new legislation comes in, the company secretary's got to advise the board, and then particularly they may not be an expert on climate change or on AI or anything like that, but their role is to make sure the board gets the right advice and the right expertise. Climate change, for example, we've had all these floods in Limpopo, in the Kruger Park, in Nelson Mandela Bay, we've had it in Durban. That's an easy thing. For every company needs to be concerned about climate change. Now you would say, well, okay, how do we do this? So the company secretary would start raising this together with the chairperson at board meetings and saying, what are we doing about climate change? How's our company looking at solar energy? Are we looking at water? Are we looking at ESCOM and energy and all that kind of stuff? So then we might have new legislation on remuneration. The Companies Act has been amended that, we now have to have a remuneration report that has to be approved by shareholders. All this kind of stuff is the ambit of the company secretary. Now, bear in mind, often our directors might be very good businessmen. They might have got up to the top echelons, being very good at accounting or at being a good entrepreneur and so on, but they don't necessarily understand the corporate governance code. They don't necessarily understand the Companies Act. And that's where the company secretary comes in. They would have to advise these directors on their duties. Often people just don't know and they make mistakes. And that's why you want a good company secretary there who can say, please guys, we don't want to end up in the newspapers. Let's do this properly.
Absolutely. And I think, Stephen, the more you talk about what maketh for a good company secretary, the more I'm thinking, even from an academic perspective, before the qualifications offered by the Chartered Governance Institute, from just an academic packaging themselves, you almost need to have an understanding of various things, perhaps a little bit of understanding of the legal frameworks, a little bit of an understanding of the Employment Act, a little bit of an understanding of finance and so forth. And you need to be a rounded individual in your character.
Yeah. Well, that's right. If you look at our board exams, we have subjects called applied governance, company secretarial practice, corporate law. You mentioned the law. We have finance for decision making. Of course, we need to know a bit about finance. We have risk and compliance. So, there's a wide range of things that the company secretary would have to cover and to know. But and the other big thing is, you might have passed 20 years ago. You've got to keep yourself abreast. We have compulsory continuing professional development, where every member has to keep their knowledge up to date and abreast and so on. And the board has to make a decision each year whether their company secretary is fit for purpose. And it has to be minuted and so on. And you will find the board is not going to be comfortable with a company secretary who does not know their stuff, who is not able to advise them properly, or makes mistakes, or the minutes. It's a basic thing like minutes. Your minutes might end up in court one day, and then you have to explain why these minutes say A, B, and C, and why a particular director who dissented, why was it not minuted? There's basic things about minutes, about resolutions, about giving the correct notice in an AGM, about allowing people to speak at an AGM. You do not shut people down in an AGM. The whole idea is to allow your shareholders to ask the questions they want to ask. And there have been unfortunate some cases of chairmen who try and close down the questions very quickly or try and get an AGM done and over in 20 minutes. It's not how it's supposed to be. We want good governance in South Africa. We deserve it. I mean, and we've got to push hard for this good governance. Otherwise, it affects everything. Once a particular public sector doesn't do what it's supposed to do, it affects all the people who live in that area.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Definitely given us something to ponder on there for those who perhaps are already in some kind of secretariat role and want to make sure that they've bolstered up their skills. You can get in contact with the Chartered Governance Institute of Southern Africa. Maybe you want to get qualified and vetted. They are the institution to do exactly that. Stephen Sadie, thank you so much for the time. Chief Executive Officer of the Chartered Governance Institute of Southern Africa. And we're talking, that conversation was around the role of a company secretary and what makes for good and sound governance, some of those important pillars there. It's fast approaching 2:30. In fact, in a matter of a minute, it's going to be 2:30. And then Ondela is going to come through with the headline news. And on the other side of that, we're going to get into our kids programming with Kids Corner. And then we'll come back and wrap up the show with a conversation that's looking at funding health interventions with that looming deadline for the UN Development Goals coming through in 2030, less than 4 years' time. And the South African Medical Research Council, with the presidency of South Africa's Presidential Youth Employment Intervention, they hosted the Outcome Finance Alliance Summit just last week, where they were unpacking some pertinent information. We'll unpack that on the other side of Kids Corner.
With the ever-changing financial landscape, it can be difficult to make sense of all the moves at times. Join me, Jimmy Moyaha, on the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m, as we break down the key market trends, top financial stories, and smart investment insights, all in one place. It's everything you need to stay financially informed and ahead of the curve.
Thank you, Bridget. On the news headlines, the police service says 5 of the 12 senior police officers appeared in the Pretoria Magistrate Court in connection with the Medicare 24 Tshwane district contract have been served with notices of intention to suspend them. At least 12 vehicles are believed to have been set alight as the march against the alleged coronation of a Nigerian Igbo king turns volatile at Kukompo City in the Eastern Cape. And the Israeli military says it's withdrawing an entire battalion from the occupied West Bank after soldiers detained and assaulted a CNN television crew last week. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Investing shouldn't feel risky. It should give you security and good returns. Earn up to 7.25% interest per annum with an ABSA Cash Invest Tracker for an investment of 100,000 rands or more. Your capital is guaranteed with immediate access to your funds. That's minimum risk, maximum benefit. ABSA Private Banking customers can invest from just R1. Open via the ABSA Banking app, a branch, a private banker, or 0860 111 515. Your story matters. ABSA is an authorized financial services provider. T's and C's apply.
This Human Rights Month, we commemorate a significant milestone, the Bill of Rights at 30, making human dignity real. For 3 decades, South Africa's constitution has been a beacon of equality, freedom and justice for all. Yet dignity is not just written in our constitution, it must be lived, protected and upheld every single day. Join SAFM as we unpack the issues that matter, elevate voices driving change, and reflect on the progress we've made while confronting the work that still lies ahead. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. This program is brought to you by SABC Education, enriching minds, enriching lives.
Hello friends and happy Monday. Welcome to another exciting episode of Kids Corner. The first school term is over. Well done for all your hard work. How was school for you this term? Did you enjoy the most? How do you think you performed in your schoolwork this term? What is something you are proud of from this term? Was there anything you found difficult? How did you try to improve? What is one thing you'd like to do better in the next term? All right, friends, let's hear from some of our friends while you share answers with the people next to you.
Hi, my name is Danny Goodwood. School wasn't that bad, but it also wasn't that great. The thing I enjoyed the most about school was probably just being with my friends. I don't think I did that great in my schoolwork this term. I feel as though I could have done much better if I actually logged in. The thing I'm proud of from first term was that I passed and that I tried and tried instead of just giving up. The transition to this new grade was difficult, especially the workload. I tried to improve by trying different study methods to see which one would actually work and help me remember the content better. In the next term, I would like to improve by being more focused and by working harder and pushing for 80% and above. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Akonawa Takaran. I am 9 years old and I am in grade 5. Since the first term, school has been a little bit tricky for me. I really enjoyed PE the most last term. In my schoolwork, I think I did very well. Something that I was proud of first term was actually maths. I did very good in maths. There was something that I found difficult. It was fractions of length of different shapes. I asked my teacher for help and he helped me to understand. One thing I would like to do better next time is how I write different subjects.
Greetings to you all. My name is Lorraine and thank you so much for listening to the Kids Radio Show today. This term was awesome. I enjoyed learning about history, especially about World War I and what happened during that time. I think I performed really well, especially in technology. The one thing that I'm very proud of myself for doing or performing well in was technology, because we had to do a project and it was a little bit tricky. The most difficult subject would most probably be art, because I'm not good at art and I tried to improve my art by practicing at home. The next term I would love to improve on my mathematics. Thank you so much for listening to me today and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!
Hello everyone, my name is Matimba Kosa. I go to Jabez School. I am 7 years old. This term was great. I got to dress up as my favorite Bible character, David. I performed very good this term. The thing I'm proud of this term is that I improved my writing skills because it was difficult for me in the beginning. Next time I still want to improve on writing neatly.
Good day, my name is Monet Angel Mengwabera. So reflecting on the first term,
School was pretty cool, but it was also tiring for me. And what I enjoyed this year was that I am learning new topics, doing subjects that I love and I'm interested in, and basically discovering things about myself. Another thing that I enjoyed this year on the first term was basically reuniting with all my friends, although some of them were separated because we are doing different subjects now. I think I performed okay in my schoolwork because it's the first term while adjusting with the new subject and having to know some things from those subjects. I think I performed pretty well because some of the exams were not really difficult. One thing I am proud of is that I put effort in my schoolwork this term. I studied as much as I could. I went to my extra classes as much as I could, and I took it very seriously. And hopefully, I'll do that in the next term as well. Yes, there was something that I found difficult, and how I tried to improve with that. I contacted my extra class teacher to help me in that specific subject, and I also consulted subject teacher to also help me understand the concepts that I didn't understand. Next term, I'd love to improve my time management skills, get some of my assignments on time, and also get rid of procrastination as much as I can and do well in my studies and understand better. Thank you and have a lovely day.
School has been good for me. I was really pleased with my term results. My academic goals is to continue getting lots of level 7s for my subjects. For me to reach my goals, I will continue to do my best in class and ask the teacher if I do not understand. I will work hard at home doing my homework and studying all the work I did in class for that day. I ask my parents for help with difficult work, reading books, also with my brother. Thank you.
My name is Dureta Hundlu. School has been okay. My progress report for the previous term was good. I would like to pay extra attention to all my cycle tests and assignments. I would like to pass all of my exams and get distinctions. To achieve my academic goal, I plan on setting up a weekly study timetable. I will also keep doing my daily homework to keep up with all my subjects.
Thank you, friends. It's always great to hear from you. Finishing the first school term is an important moment to pause, reflect, and recognize how far you've come. Every term is a journey filled with learning, growth, challenges, and achievements. Taking time to think about your experiences helps you understand what you did well and where you can improve. There are always special moments during the term that stand out. Maybe it was learning something new, enjoying a favorite subject, making new friends, or taking part in sports or school activities. These moments bring joy and help make school a positive and exciting place. Recognizing what you enjoyed most helps you stay motivated and look forward to the next term. Thinking about your schoolwork is also important. You may feel proud of how you performed, or you may feel there's still room for improvement. Both are completely okay. What matters the most is the effort you put in, the progress you made, and your willingness to keep learning. Every test, assignment, and class activity is an opportunity to grow. It is also important to celebrate something you're proud of. It could be improving your reading, doing well in a subject, completing your homework on time, or even becoming more confident in class. These achievements, big or small, show your dedication and hard work. At the same time, every learner faces challenges. There may have been subjects or tasks that felt difficult. What matters is how you responded. Did you ask for help, practice more, or try a different way of learning? These steps show determination and a strong mindset. Challenges are not failures. They are opportunities to learn and grow. Looking ahead to the next term, setting one goal for yourself can make a big difference. It could be improving your marks, staying more organized, listening more carefully in class, or managing your time better. Small, clear goals help you stay focused and motivated. In the end, every school term is a chance to grow academically, socially, and personally. By reflecting on your experiences, celebrating your achievements, Learning from your challenges and setting new goals, you prepare yourself for even greater success in the future. Keep believing in yourself, keep trying your best, and remember every step forward is progress. That's it for today, friends. See you next time.
This program was brought to you by SABC Education. Enriching minds, enriching lives.
This Human Rights Month, we commemorate a significant milestone, the Bill of Rights at 30, making human dignity real. For 3 decades, South Africa's constitution has been a beacon of equality, freedom and justice for all. Yet dignity is not just written in our constitution, it must be lived, protected and upheld every single day. Join SAFM as we unpack the issues that matter, elevate voices driving change, and reflect on the progress we've made while confronting the work that still lies ahead. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. For 90 years, one voice has informed, challenged, and connected a nation. SAFM, South Africa's national English public radio station. Established in 1936 as the SABC's very first service, the A program evolving through the English service, Radio South Africa, to SAFM in 1995, shaping thought and strengthening democracy. From a full-spectrum station to a trusted home of news and talk, SAFM continues to lead the conversations 90 years strong. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Wherever you are in the world, SAFM 104 to 107 is accessible. We're also streaming live on Facebook, X, and YouTube at SAFM Radio. We acknowledge and appreciate everyone tuning in and watching our streams. Stay with SAFM 104 to 107 as we bring you commission live, breaking stories, and thought-provoking lectures. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
All right, let's look at funding health interventions up front as we get closer to the UN Development Goals 2030. We're in conversation with Prof. Farid Abdullah, who's the director at the Office of AIDS and TB Research in the South African Medical Research Council. And the South African Medical Research Council, together with the presidency of South Africa's Presidential Youth Employment Intervention, hosted the Outcome Finance Alliance Summit last week that brought together global and local partners to advance the use of outcomes-based financing in addressing South Africa's most pressing health and development challenges. Good afternoon to you, Prof. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you, Bridget. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for the time. Much appreciated. Let's talk about the summit that was hosted last week, bringing together those various stakeholders. Perhaps the key learnings and the challenges that were identified during the summit.
Thanks, Bridget. So we had people from 28 different countries coming together for one single idea, which is to get governments and funders to pay for outcomes rather than for input. Traditionally, you know, whenever we run a health program or an education program or a job creation program, we pay for the costs of those programs to be rolled out. But in the case of impact bonds or outcomes-based funding, you know, payment only happens after the outcome is achieved. And that changes the entire way of doing business in these projects.
Mm-hmm. When we talk about sort of coming together to ensure the payment of outcomes versus inputs. School us who are, just laymen who are not in these sectors or don't deal with this particular framework model.
Yeah, so if I give you the example of the MRC's first social impact bond, instead of going to government to say, look, we will deliver a certain program, we go to the investment market and we ask investors to put up working capital for the project. That money is used to implement the program. And once the outcomes are achieved, then government, and in this case the MRC on behalf of government, buys those outcomes. Now what that does is firstly it puts everybody on notice that this is private capital that's been raised. It cannot be wasted, it cannot be abused, it cannot be poorly used. It must achieve the outcomes. And if outcomes are underachieved or not achieved, then the investor loses money. So government only pays for successful outcomes, and that's the beauty of it. And that's why our National Treasury likes this model so much.
Does this speak broadly to the work of the South African Medical Research Council in terms of pioneering work in the social impact bonds?
Well, we've implemented the first impact bond in the health sector. I'm happy to say that other people are implementing this in other sectors. So basic education has an impact bond for early childhood development. And then, as you mentioned in your introduction, the presidency is involved with this Jobs Boost Fund. In that case, a lot of people have been using money from the National Skills Fund to train people, but in the Jobs Boost Impact Bond, the implementer only gets paid if the person has been trained and placed in a job and retained in a job. And that's the outcome we're looking for. Giving someone a certificate and 6 months of training and leaving them to be unemployed doesn't really achieve the goal. So once again, private investors or philanthropic investors make the initial investment, and what government then pays for is once the outcomes are achieved. What's really nice about this is that government only pays for successful outcomes, and the risk of failure is transferred to the investor. Now, Bridget, as you know, if somebody is losing money because you're not achieving your targets, then, it triggers a whole lot of steps to improve performance. So these programs not only transfer the risk of failure to the private sector, but they generally lead to much better performance. In the case of the Medical Research Council, we implemented a program in 14 high schools, providing girls access to HIV prevention and treatment, and contraception and early antenatal care for those who fall pregnant. The results we achieved were phenomenal, and one of the reasons is that every time we were falling behind on our targets, our social investor said, look, I'm losing money here, so you better do better. So everybody works together to achieve good outcomes. If the outcomes are matched, government will buy all these outcomes and pay for the service in the end. And in fact, because you get efficiency gains, the investor will generate a financial return. It's a modest return. It's not like investing on the JSE, but they will also get a social impact. And what we are doing is we want to attract investors from the private sector who are interested in social impact. That's why we call it a social impact bond.
Absolutely. Goal 3, if we are to cast our eyes on the UN Development Goals, Goal 3 of the UN Development Goals targets the end of epidemics, the likes of AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, and of course neglected tropical diseases, alongside waterborne diseases and other communicable diseases. Are we set to reach these goals by 2030?
So we're definitely not on track. I think everybody has accepted that now. And in the last 5 years that remain, I think the idea is to get more private investment, but also less reliance on donor funding. Because, as you know, we've seen since the Trump presidency, there were brutal cuts to donor funding across the globe. including in South Africa, which means we must use our own resources, use domestic resources. But, if we want to use the little money we have, we must optimize that money. We must make sure we're using it well, we're getting value for money, and these outcomes-based contracts are ways to optimize the domestic resources that we will be deploying now.
Maybe also, Prof, if we can touch a bit on the pathways, perhaps, and the benefits of unlocking further public-private partnerships, particularly those that can actually accelerate the impact and the institutionalization of outcomes-based financing. Prof?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yes. If you can talk us through that, those pathways and benefits of unlocking that further public-private partnership.
Yeah, so what we have at the moment is we have a few projects, about 12 projects in South Africa. But in order to achieve goals like the SDG goals, in order to have impact on a higher scale, we actually need the big government departments to come forward. And like, for instance, with our Imagine Impact Fund, we were in 14 schools. That needs to be scaled up to a few thousand schools. The MRC can only do the proof of concept, but it's for the health and education departments to step forward. In order for them to do it, they need a clear guidance from Treasury, which says, this is how it's done, this is what you're allowed to do, and this is how you go about implementing these. And that's what we call institutionalization. So we have proof of concept now in a few areas, but to have the benefit of these outcomes-based contracts, we really do need to institutionalize and scale them up to the level that they achieve population-level impact.
Yeah. Prof, we have to leave it there for this afternoon, but we appreciate the time and the sharing of the information. That was Prof. Farid Abdullah, Director at the Office of AIDS and TB Research in the South African Medical Research Council. In our last 5 minutes, we are going to jump live to Gugombo, formerly East London, and we're going to catch up with SABC reporter on the ground, Hlumisa Qabaka, who is there. Those protests have been happening the whole morning. I'm sure you've been seeing them on your television sets. Protests against the coronation of Nigerian Igbo king, as well as targeting places of retail and work by foreign nationals in the area. How are you doing this afternoon, Hlumisa? Are we're not ready as yet? Okay, we're just getting them on the line, so let's go to promo. We'll be right back.
With the ever-changing financial landscape, it can be difficult to make sense of all the moves at times. Join me, Jimmy Moyaha, on the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m, as we break down the key market trends, top financial stories, and smart investment insights, all in one place. It's everything you need to stay financially informed and ahead of the curve.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
All right, let's go live to Gugombo, former East London. We're trying to connect with our SABC reporter who is on the ground there, Hlumisa Qabaka. We're going to find out more what's happening with those protests that looked like they were going to turn violent even earlier on in the morning when they first started. It seemed as though it was going to be a hard situation to control. Hlumisa, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks, Bridget, and you?
I'm great, thank you. I mean, paint us a picture of what's happening there and what has motivated this protest action.
All I can say is that the streets are not red, the streets are black, as the protesters have started burning properties of foreign national shops. I am talking about 13 cars at the moment that have been recorded as being banned and owned by foreign national shop owners. This is all from a protest that was supposed to be a peaceful march regarding the illegal coronation of the Nigerian king, the Igbo king, saying this is whereby South Africans were saying, including different traditional houses of the Eastern Cape, saying that they are not happy in what had happened. They were not engaged, and one cannot come into another nation and claim that they are part of the kingdom without discussing it with them. This is an insult towards them. And now the question that has been raised is that, are these people properly documented to be part of South Africa? And what is the need for them to be doing such a thing?
Yeah.
Now, yes.
No, continue.
Now, earlier on, as the commotion continued, this was done after a boy who was part of the protest was stabbed by someone who is described as a foreign national. This is when everything started falling apart, as the people started saying that they are going to exert revenge towards the foreign nationals for attacking them in this peaceful protest, saying that this is their land and what they are doing is a continuation of disrespecting us. Now, about 3 other people have been injured and are on their way to hospital. Earlier also, Deputy Minister of Costa, Princess Olila Benzingamashe, released a statement saying that they are calling upon the people to govern down, to dismiss and end the protest, as their grievances have been heard and accepted, with the follow-up that everything shall be properly done. But the people are still here, angry and participating in vandalizing some of the shops.
Yeah. Hlumisa, we've definitely seen the tensions, in most parts of South Africa when it comes to the relations between South Africans and illegal foreigners. I wonder, what has that sort of been like in the former East London? Has this been tensions that have been brewing for a long time? And then obviously this coronation of the Igbo king being the catalytic event that has now lit the fire, quite literally.
The problem in the Eastern Cape, especially around Ukombo, hasn't been that aggressive. Yes, people were happy saying that the high number of drugs in the streets is due to foreign nationals, but there was a relationship of being able to work towards each other. After that video circulated, it raised concerns in terms of how dare you come into my land and then claim you're part of it without discussing it with me. Now, this is when the tension has aggravated. We have people also from KZN who have come to join, saying that if the Eastern Cape approves of this matter, it will also spread out to other provinces, whereby they will do as they please. We have Khulu here, who is also part of the march. He is very vocal, saying that if these nationals do not respect us, then they need to exit and leave South Africa before they corrupt and do more damage.
Yeah, definitely scenes that are quite disturbing coming out of Gukompo. We appreciate the time with you and for giving us that rundown of what's been happening on the ground. That was SABC reporter Hlumisa Qabaka, who is live Gukompo this afternoon. That is a developing story, and of course you can catch it on SABC channel 404, and I'm pretty sure that the National Pulse are also going to be tackling it from various perspectives. Indeed, a conversation to be had there from a cultural perspective around, just as you heard Hlumisa saying, one of the grievances on the ground is the fact that that Igbo king was coronated, and the question is, can you come into another's home and claim a kingdom? It's definitely a conversation worth interrogating from a cultural perspective. From us, that is where we leave it. Have a good afternoon further. We will connect again tomorrow. Inshallah, God willing, we get to do it again.
Thank you, Bridget, and the team on the top stories. Disciplinary processes against Sergeant Nkosi underway, and Gukompo march against Nigerian king turns volatile. For SFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good afternoon. Acting Police Deputy National Commissioner for Support Services, Dineo Nkhoa, says disciplinary processes are underway against Sergeant Fanny Nkosi following his testimony before the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry in Pretoria. It emerged during the proceedings that Nkosi allegedly worked with alleged criminal cartel leaders, including Vusimuzi Kat Matlala and Gatiso KT Molife. Nkhoa says the SAPS has pledged to introduce reforms within the police service.
Yes, we are all shocked with what was revealed at the Madlanga Commission in as far as Sergeant Nkosi's testimony is concerned. And once again, our disciplinary processes are unfolding in terms of, Sergeant Nkosi. And yes, we will reclaim our space. I think we'll take this opportunity as a way of, transforming the SAPS and introducing certain reforms. I think we are in a bad state now, but we will redeem ourselves.
Suspended South Gauteng Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Andrew Chauke, says he's ready to resume his duties and continue working with some of his colleagues who he says doubted his capabilities. That's if the Nkabinde inquiry in Pretoria into his fitness to hold office does not find any wrongdoing against him. He says that he complied with the NPA Act and country's constitution in how he handled the 1999 murder of Opara Mogibe involving former crime intelligence head General Richard Mdluli. He also came under heavy criticism from the NPA head Advocate Shamila Batohi, who accused him of unduly instituting racketeering charges against former KwaZulu-Natal Hogs Johan Boysen and the members of the Ketomano organized crime unit in 2012. Chauke's legal counsel, Advocate Tembeka Ncukaitobi.
But the fact of the matter is that if you are not found guilty, you have to go back to the NPA, work with some people that you would feel have been unfair to you, but Advocate Batoy is gone, so there is no issue there. What is your view on that?
No, it happens in life and in work environment that you will differ as colleagues and the work must continue. There's really no issue.
But you will be happy to go back and to continue with your work without any feeling of animosity.
Indeed.
And the President should not be concerned that this act of suspending you and taking you to a disciplinary hearing has somehow impacted your ability to fulfill the functions as the Director of Public Prosecution.
Not at all, except that in terms of life outside there, family and whatever.
At least 12 vehicles are believed to have been set alight as the march against the alleged coronation of a Nigerian Igbo king turns volatile at Kukompo City in the Eastern Cape. It is alleged that a member of the group that came down from KwaZulu-Natal was stabbed, sparking the arson. The march had been organized as a peaceful demonstration, with participants intending to hand over a memorandum raising concerns over the reported coronation of an Igbo Nigerian king in the Eastern Cape. Hlomisa Qabaga has more.
During the handover of the memorandum regarding the matter of the coronation and the legality of those who were participants in the event of the coronation, one of the KZN unit members was stabbed by who is alleged to be a foreign national. People are now all over the streets of Oxford Street in Kukombo, taking their exacting revenge upon those who they assume are Nigerian nationals. Shops and vehicles.
Bus operator Padco says it is ready for the busy Easter travel period, with over 600 buses set to be deployed across key routes for religious destinations. Padco spokesperson Lindoku Hlekulu says the company is banking on advanced technology, including a 24-hour monitoring control center and onboard surveillance cameras to ensure passenger safety. He says the system tracks driver behavior, speed and bus movement in real time.
Tell you that from now on, in terms of where we are, we've been able to master the craft of using this system, and this includes checking driver behavior, monitoring whether people are speeding or not, whether a bus is stationary where it's not supposed to be stationary. Those are flags that are able to tell us that there is something wrong with the bus. So that helps us in terms of the compliance that is required, especially when it comes to the high pressure period that is the Easter weekend that we're headed to. And I must say that we've been commissioned and trusted by many congregations. In fact, one of the notable ones is, of course, the Zion Christian Church, but there's also Universal Church.
The Israeli military says it's withdrawing an entire battalion from the occupied West Bank after soldiers detained and assaulted a CNN television crew last week. Members of the reserve unit took the team's cameraman in a chokehold. The BBC's Joanna Keane.
The CNN team was reporting on an assault on an elderly Palestinian man in his home and on an illegal outpost set up by Israeli settlers when they were approached by the soldiers. Guns were pointed directly at them before the cameraman was placed in a chokehold and forced to the ground. In a recording, one of the soldiers can be heard saying the entire West Bank belonged to Jews. The IDF said the soldiers' job was to maintain law and order, and the incident represented a serious ethical and professional failure.
Recapping the top story, Acting Police Deputy National Commissioner for Support Services, Dineo Nkwa, says disciplinary processes are underway against Sergeant Fani Nkosi following his testimony before the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry in Pretoria. I'm on Delamba for SFM News Headlines at 3:30.
In your sports this hour, Semenya slams IOC for transgender rule. Motsepe endorses Adamu as worthy CAF SG candidate, and FIA to review F1 rules after Bayman crash. More details at 3:30.
We're on the ground and in the air with Thulani Sijo, founder of Take a Pic Drones. What's the flight plan for your connectivity?
The need for stable network connectivity is an absolute must in my field.
And with Telkom Business Fiber and Flexon, Thulani uploads high-res tower inspections and navigates seamlessly on the go. Get Stream Connect Fiber from